Hey everyone, welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be talking about beat sheets today.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah. Maybe you're a screenwriter, maybe you're just fascinated by movies. Either way, I think this is going to be really interesting. We've got some great sources lined up today.
Yeah.
YouTube videos from screenwriting experts Jill Chamberlain, Steve Harper, and Paul Chitlick, and then a really cool article from the Script Lab.
Nice.
Yeah, so we're going to tackle the big questions like, what exactly is a beat sheet?
Right.
Are they essential for writing a screenplay?
Good question.
And what kind of insider tips and tricks can we steal from these pros, to elevate our own writing game?
I love it. Let's dive in.
All right, so first things first, what exactly is a beat sheet?
Well, it's interesting because a beat isn't just any plot point.
Right.
It's got to have some real emotional impact on your main character. Think about that scene in Barbie where she suddenly starts thinking about death. That's a great example from that Script Lab article. It's a pivotal moment emotionally, and it kind of sets her whole journey in motion.
Okay, so it's not just about what happens, but how those events make the character feel.
Exactly. And that's where you see the difference between an outline and a beat sheet.
Oh, wait.
An outline is more like your roadmap.
Right.
It tells you where the story's going step by step. But a beat sheet,
Yeah.
it's more like an emotional GPS. It's tracking the protagonist's inner journey,
Yeah.
It highlights the moments of change, conflict, growth.
Okay, so like an outline might say, Dorothy arrives in Oz.
Right. Exactly.
But a beat sheet would focus on the feeling of that moment, like Dorothy is overwhelmed by the wonder and the terror of Oz.
You got it. That's a perfect example.
Okay, that makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
So is a beat sheet something that every screenwriter needs? I mean, I've heard some writers say they can actually stifle creativity.
It's true. There are definitely different schools of thought on this. Jill Chamberlain, for example, acknowledges that some writers can do without them, especially if they're working with different structures, like the nutshell technique.
Right.
But for the most part, she thinks the structure a beat sheet provides is really helpful for writers, like a safety net, almost.
A safety net, I like that.
Yeah. She does warn against getting too detailed, though.
Really?
Yeah, she believes there needs to be room for discovery.
Oh, right, those unexpected aha moments.
Exactly. Like, a beat sheet can be a guide, but it shouldn't feel like a straitjacket,
Right, got to leave some room for the magic to happen. Now, Steve Harper, on the other hand, he seems to be all about structure.
Oh, yeah. He is a big believer in outlining. He even compares it to having a blueprint before you build a house.
Wow, yeah, I can see that.
He actually says he outlines until he feels like called to write dialogue, which I think is such a cool way to put it.
It is, yeah.
He really emphasizes that outlining helps prevent writers from getting lost or, hitting that dreaded writer's block.
Right, right. But isn't there a risk of, over-structuring? Like, where do you draw the line between planning and spontaneity?
That's a great question. I think for Steve, over-structuring becomes a problem when it starts to feel forced or mechanical.
Okay, yeah.
Like, he encourages writers to trust their intuition, allow the story to kind of unfold organically, even within the framework of an outline.
It's about finding that balance, right?
Exactly, yeah. Between planning and those spontaneous moments of inspiration.
Okay, so Steve is team structure, but with a healthy dose of flexibility.
Absolutely.
Now, what about Paul Chitlick? Where does he stand on this whole beat sheet debate?
Oh, Paul is a total beat sheet evangelist. He even compares writing without one to getting on a random plane without knowing your destination.
Oh, yikes.
Talk about a recipe for disaster, right?
Yeah.
He shares these stories about his screenwriting students at UCLA who, initially resisted beat sheets, but, ended up finding them completely essential for staying on track and actually finishing their scripts.
Wow, so he's seen firsthand how they can help writers avoid those narrative detours and actually reach their final destination.
Exactly.
Now, something all of our experts seem to agree on is that conflict is at the heart of every good beat.
Oh, absolutely.
But how do you know if you're overdoing it? I've heard this term conflict fatigue. Is that a real thing?
Oh, it definitely is. It's kind of like adding too much spice to a dish. It can just overpower all the other flavors.
Right, right.
Jill Chamberlain warns against adding pointless conflict just for the sake of it. Every conflict needs to have a purpose.
Okay.
It should reveal something about the characters or move the story forward.
So it's not just about throwing random obstacles in the protagonist's way.
Exactly, yeah.
Every challenge should contribute to their growth and move the story towards its resolution.
Right. And, Steve Harper also stresses that each beat should connect back to the overall story and character development.
Okay, so every scene has to earn its place.
Exactly. Every scene needs to serve a purpose.
Makes sense. Now, for those of us who are ready to give beat sheets a try, what are the key elements? Like, what should we be looking for?
Well, most beat sheets follow that classic three-act structure. The Script Lab article does a really great job of breaking this down. They outline key moments like the inciting incident, the midpoint where the stakes are raised, the dreaded all is lost moment, and of course, the resolution.
Right, right. But it's important to remember that these are just guidelines, right? Not like hard and fast rules.
Absolutely, yeah. Every story is unique and it's going to have its own rhythm and flow.
So it's like a roadmap for the emotional journey of the story. But how do you make sure each beat is actually doing its job, like driving the story forward and revealing something meaningful about the character?
Paul Chitlick has this awesome tool for this.
Oh, yeah.
He has these 3 questions that he drills into his students. He's like, who's there? Where are they? What's the conflict?
Okay, simple but powerful.
Right. They might seem simple, but they're really powerful for kind of uncovering the dramatic potential of each beat. Like, by asking who's there, you're forced to think about the characters, their relationships. Where are they? Brings the setting into focus, and what's the conflict? Well, that forces you to identify the core tension in that scene.
Wow, those are definitely going in my writer's toolbox. Okay, so we've talked about the theory, but what about some of those little nuggets of wisdom our experts shared about their own writing processes? I bet there are some real gems in there.
Oh, for sure. Steve Harper, for example, has some really interesting advice about research. He advocates for a more flexible approach,
Hmm.
drawing inspiration from books, documentaries, conversations, you name it.
Oh,
He even finds inspiration in those moments of like isolation you get on public transportation.
interesting.
Yeah. It's about keeping your eyes open, being receptive to these unexpected moments.
Yeah, it's like you need to feed your creative brain with new experiences. Let those unexpected connections make the magic happen.
Exactly. It's not just about sitting at your desk staring at a blank page.
Right, get out there, live a little.
Exactly. He believes that those unexpected encounters, those moments of observation, can spark some of the most surprising and compelling ideas.
I love that. Now, what about Paul Chitlick? Any words of wisdom from him?
He has this great concept of trusted advisors, people who really understand your process and can offer feedback without trying to impose their own vision on your story.
Oh, that's so important.
Yeah. He stresses that beat sheets are personal tools, not something you necessarily want to share with everyone, but having a small group of people you trust to give you constructive criticism can be invaluable.
Okay, so it's like your writer's support group. I love that.
Oh,
All right, we've talked a lot about the theory of beat sheets, but let's see how this all comes together with a real-world example.
all right. Sounds good.
The Script Lab article uses The Wizard of Oz to illustrate how a beat sheet actually works.
Oh, perfect example.
Right. Ready to take a trip down the yellow brick road.
Let's go.
Okay, so remember that opening image of Dorothy in Kansas?
Oh, yeah.
Black and white world, her running down that dirt road. It instantly tells us, she wants to escape her ordinary life.
Right.
And then that theme of wanting to run away from responsibility, it's reinforced when Toto bites Mrs. Gulch.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
And then, of course, there's that iconic song Over the Rainbow where she's literally singing her desire to escape.
Literally.
And then, bam, the cyclone hits. But instead of, seeking shelter, she runs after Toto,
Right.
which ultimately leads her to the fantastical land of Oz.
Yeah.
So her irresponsible actions, her desire to escape, it actually sets her on this incredible journey.
It's like her yearning for something more becomes the catalyst for her whole adventure.
Exactly. Now, once in Oz, what happens?
Well, she starts this quest to meet the wizard, hoping he can send her home. Along the way, she meets the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion.
Oh, right. The gang's all here. But I mean, those interactions, they're not just random encounters, right?
Oh, no, definitely not. They're carefully crafted beats designed to test her compassion, her courage.
So even those seemingly lighthearted moments, they're actually key turning points in her emotional journey.
Exactly. They're shaping her character,
Okay.
pushing her to grow.
And then we hit that crucial midpoint, right?
Yeah.
Dorothy and her friends finally arrive at the Emerald City.
They think their troubles are over.
Yeah.
But then the wizard tells them he can't help her get home unless they bring him the Wicked Witch's broomstick.
Oh, man. So it's a victory, but also a major setback.
Exactly. Like, the stakes are raised even higher.
It's like she's reached a new level in the game, but the challenges are even more intense.
Exactly. And from this point on, the Wicked Witch, she starts closing in, She's determined to steal Dorothy's ruby slippers.
Right, right.
She sends those terrifying flying monkeys after her. Things start to get really scary.
Oh, yeah.
This is where Dorothy's resilience is truly tested. She's not just facing physical danger, but also the potential loss of everything she holds dear.
And then, that heart-wrenching moment where the Wicked Witch threatens to hurt Toto.
Oh, I know.
Unless Dorothy gives up the ruby slippers.
And she does.
She does, but the witch, realizing she needs Dorothy dead to actually claim those slippers, turns over an hourglass.
Oh, no! Giving Dorothy only 1 hour to live.
Talk about an all-is-lost moment.
Right, and this is where we see Dorothy's utter despair. She sees Auntie M in that crystal ball,
Yeah.
and she realizes she's failed the person she loves most.
That's awful.
She's completely lost, hopeless. This is a powerful way to end Act 2. Leave the audience wondering, how on earth is she going to get out of this?
Wow, this deep dive is already blowing my mind.
I know, right?
But wait, there's more to Dorothy's story, right?
Oh, yeah, there is. But we're going to have to save Act 3 and the rest of this Oz adventure for part 2 of our deep dive.
Oh, man. All right, everyone, don't worry. We'll be back soon to reveal how Dorothy's story and our exploration of beat sheets unfolds. Stay tuned.
Can't wait.
Welcome back to our deep dive into beat sheets.
Yeah.
Last time, we left Dorothy facing that all-is-lost moment in The Wizard of Oz, right? Her hope fading with every grain of sand in that hourglass.
It was a real cliffhanger, wasn't it?
It was.
But remember how Paul Chitlick emphasized that every beat should move the story forward? A&D reveals something new about the character.
Right, right.
That's exactly what happens in Act 3. Dorothy, she's been through so much, but her journey's actually made her stronger, more resilient.
Okay, so she's not giving up without a fight. What does she do?
Well, first thing, Toto escapes.
Toto, of course.
He finds the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion, and they all come back to help her. And this isn't just a cute reunion, it's a reminder that Dorothy's not alone. Those friendships she's made, the lessons she's learned about courage and compassion, all that's part of her transformation.
So even her relationships are tied to her growth as a character. I'm starting to see how every detail in a good story is connected.
Totally. And together, they hatch this plan to storm the Wicked Witch's castle and rescue Dorothy. But during all the chaos, the witch, she accidentally catches fire. And here's where it gets really interesting. Dorothy, even after all the witch has put her through, she tries to put out the flames.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a moment of pure empathy, like she refuses to let go of her humanity. And ironically, that's what ends up destroying the witch.
So her act of kindness, her refusal to become like the witch, that's what leads to her victory. That's such a powerful message. It's like she's saying, you don't have to become a monster to defeat one.
Exactly. And it speaks to the importance of character development. Dorothy's experiences have shaped her, They've made her more courageous, more compassionate, more capable of overcoming the challenges. It's not just about defeating the bad guy. It's about what the protagonist learns along the way.
Right, right. Okay, so the witch is defeated, but Dorothy still needs to get home. What happens next?
Well, she and her friends bring the witch's broomstick back to the wizard, hoping he'll finally keep his promise, right? But here's another twist. They discover he's a fraud.
What?
Yeah, just an ordinary man hiding behind smoke and mirrors. It's another test for Dorothy, another challenge to her faith and hope.
This is a great example of how beat sheets can reveal those unexpected turns, those moments that keep the audience guessing. So after all that, Dorothy is still stuck in Oz.
It seems that way. She even starts to believe she'll never see home again. But then, just when all hope seems lost, Glinda the Good Witch appears. It's like a ray of light breaking through the darkness.
That's Glinda, the ultimate problem solver.
Right. And she reveals this amazing thing. She tells Dorothy that she's had the power to return home all along.
Okay.
All she has to do is click her heels together 3 times and say, there's no place like home.
Of course, the most iconic line in the movie. But if she had the power all along, why didn't she realize it before?
That's the genius of the story, right? It's not just about overcoming external obstacles. It's about internal growth. Dorothy had to go through all those trials, all those emotional beats to truly understand the meaning of home and believe in her own power to get there. The journey itself was the key.
So it's not just about taking the right actions. It's about having the right mindset. That's a powerful insight, not just for storytelling, but for life in general.
Exactly. It's about the transformation, the growth, the realization that sometimes the power we're seeking is already within us. We just need to find it.
Okay, so Dorothy clicks her heels, says the magic words, and
She's back in Kansas, safe and sound in her bed, surrounded by her family. And notice how the closing image mirrors the opening. We see Dorothy back in that black and white world, but this time there's this sense of peace, of belonging. She's not yearning for escape anymore. She's grateful for what she has. She's come full circle. But she's not the same Dorothy who ran away at the beginning.
Right. The journey has changed her. It's like she had to lose herself to find herself. She went searching for something over the rainbow, only to discover that what she truly needed was right there at home all along. But it's not just about returning to where she started. It's about who she's become because of her experiences.
Absolutely. And that transformation is even more evident in the final scene. Remember those farmhands who were kind to her? Well, it turns out they were the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion all along. It's this beautiful way to show that the lessons she learned in Oz, those friendships she made, they haven't disappeared just because she's back in Kansas. They've become a part of who she is.
Wow, that gives me chills. It's amazing how much depth and meaning can be packed into a story when you understand the emotional beats. I feel like I'll never watch The Wizard of Oz the same way again.
That's the power of understanding story structure. It can unlock this whole new level of appreciation for the films we love. Now, while The Wizard of Oz is a fantastic example, it's important to remember that beat sheets aren't just for classic movies. They're tools you can apply to any story you're trying to tell, no matter the genre or the format.
That's a good reminder. Okay, so we've explored beat sheets through the lens of The Wizard of Oz. What other insights can we glean from our expert sources? What tips do they have for actually applying these principles to our own writing?
Well, Jill Chamberlain reminds us that while beat sheets can be incredibly helpful, they shouldn't be treated like rigid formulas. They're guides, not blueprints. She encourages writers to use them as flexible tools, allow for those moments of discovery and creativity that often happen during the writing process.
Right, because it's not about plate-by-number storytelling. It's about finding the heart of the story and letting that guide you. And sometimes the best stories take unexpected turns. You have to be open to those possibilities.
Exactly. And Steve Harper emphasizes the importance of trusting your intuition. He talks about how he outlines until he feels that call to start writing dialogue, and that's when he knows he's ready to dive in. It's not about forcing the process, but finding that sweet spot where structure and creativity intersect.
It's about honoring the craft, the structure, while also embracing those moments of inspiration that can't be planned or predicted.
Exactly. And remember Paul Chitlick's advice about trusted advisors.
Yes, finding those people who can offer constructive feedback without derailing your vision.
Right. He also stresses the importance of conflict in every beat. Without conflict, there's no drama, no tension, no story. Conflict is what keeps the audience engaged, keeps them on the edge of their seats wondering what's going to happen next.
It's like the engine that drives the narrative forward. It creates the energy, the momentum that propels the story to its resolution.
Precisely. And it doesn't always have to be big, explosive conflict. Sometimes it's those subtle internal conflicts that reveal the most about a character's true nature.
I'm starting to feel like I have a much better grasp of how beat sheets work and why they're such a valuable tool.
Yeah.
But I'm sure many of you are wondering how to actually apply these concepts to your own writing. How do you take all this theory and turn it into something tangible, something you can use to craft your own compelling stories?
That's a great question. And that's exactly what we'll be exploring in part 3 of our deep dive. We'll delve into the practical side of beat sheets, offer tips and strategies for crafting those stories that will captivate your audience and leave them wanting more.
Don't miss it. We'll be back soon to guide you through the exciting world of beat sheet creation. Welcome back to our deep dive into beat sheets. We've talked about the theory, we've seen how it works in The Wizard of Oz, but now let's get practical. How can you actually use all this to improve your own writing?
Well, the good news is beat sheets are super adaptable.
Okay, good.
They can be as detailed or as simple as you need them to be,
Wow.
and they really do work for any story you can imagine.
So no one-size-fits-all approach. That's a relief. So where do we even begin?
Well, think back to those core elements we talked about.
Okay.
Your inciting incident, that midpoint where everything ramps up, the all is lost moment, and of course your resolution. Those are like the cornerstones of your structure.
Right. The big tentpole moments. But what about all the stuff in between?
That's where those pivotal emotional beats come in. And Jill Chamberlain warned us about getting too bogged down in the details. Sometimes it's actually better to start simple. What are the key moments that force your main character to confront their fears, their desires, even their flaws? What are the challenges that will push them to grow and change?
So it's about pinpointing those moments of transformation, right? Like those forks in the road where the character's journey takes a sharp turn.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to get creative with how you actually visualize your beat sheet. I mean,
Yeah.
some writers like a linear timeline. Others prefer something more visual. You can use index cards, mind maps, whatever helps you see the story unfolding.
Oh, I'm a visual person. So those index cards sound really helpful. You could move them around, try different combinations, play with the flow of the story.
Exactly. It's all about finding what works for you. Beat sheets should be fluid, like a playground where you can experiment until you find the most compelling way to tell your story.
Okay, that's really helpful. But even with the best laid plans, writers get stuck. So what do our experts say about overcoming those creative roadblocks?
Well, Steve Harper, our research guru, he reminds us that sometimes the best cure for writer's block is actually to step away from the page for a bit.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Read something totally different, watch a documentary, talk to someone you wouldn't normally talk to. You never know what's going to spark that next big idea.
Right, right. Got to feed the creative brain.
Yeah.
Let those unexpected connections make the magic happen.
Exactly. And remember Paul Chitlick's emphasis on conflict. Sometimes a scene falls flat because it's just lacking that tension. Ask yourself, what are the opposing forces here? What are the stakes? How can you turn up the heat in this moment? Emotionally, I mean.
So always be on the lookout for opportunities to inject a little conflict.
Yeah.
Make those beats really crackle with energy.
Right. And don't forget those trusted advisors Paul talked about. Sometimes you just need a fresh perspective, someone who gets your story and can help you see the potential you might be missing.
Right, like a writing buddy. Someone to brainstorm with, someone to offer encouragement when you're doubting yourself.
Exactly. Writing can be so solitary, so having that support system can make all the difference.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. What are the key takeaways you hope listeners walk away with?
Well, I really hope they see beat sheets not as these rigid rules, but as adaptable tools that can help them unlock the emotional power of their stories. It's about mapping out that inner journey of the protagonist, finding those moments of transformation, making sure every beat has a purpose.
So not just hitting plot points, but crafting a story that really connects with the audience on a deeper level.
Exactly. And remember, there's no one right way to create a beat sheet. Experiment, find what works for you, and most importantly, trust your gut.
And don't be afraid to look for inspiration in unexpected places. Whether it's a chat with a stranger, a deep dive into some fascinating subject, or even a quiet moment on your next commute. You never know what will spark that next story idea.
Beautifully said. Storytelling is an adventure, and beat sheets can be your compass, helping you navigate the uncharted waters of your imagination and bring your vision to life.
So to everyone listening, think about that story you've been wanting to tell. What are those emotional beats that will shape your protagonist's journey? How can you weave conflict transformation into every scene? Grab your notebook, your index cards, your laptop, and start exploring. Who knows what amazing stories you'll uncover. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Happy writing!